Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to say thanks to Veronica and Mete and Sabine and Jan and everybody on the team for putting together this program. Um, they've asked me to speak a little bit about my experience with ISM and to be available for any questions and to help anybody understand the experience. And I'm happy to do so. Also, just want to wish everybody the best and hope everybody is okay and their businesses and their personal lives are fine during this turbulent time. It's very challenging and even more important for the need for communication like this internationally to make sure that we're all up to speed on the important ISM role in our businesses. So that being said, qualifications, 27 years makes me sound old. And in fact, I am a little bit old, but I've watched ISM and experienced ISM over these decades, and I've been very privileged to be part of the growth of ISM. When I began going to ISM many years ago, it was primarily for ideas of what products were happening globally, what other companies were doing. Then we started importing goods from South America in particular, and I can remember it being our goal to negotiate our price down for the two products that we imported, because if we got a penny off the product, it would pay for our airfare and our hotel. So it was a very focused experience many, many years ago for the companies that I've been participating with the show with. It has changed dramatically over the years for me and for the companies that I've represented. It has become a resource for us for so many avenues of our business. So I can talk a little bit about them. Originally, as I said, new products and, creative ideas, partnerships for sourcing, bringing products into the United States. The United States really hadn't had too much presence in exporting confectionery products at the novelty level, which is what my company does and what I've often specialized in. So that has also changed. So we went from new products, sourcing relationships. All of a sudden, we started meeting with existing vendors. So we had a handful of existing vendors internationally. One thing I will say about ISM is the face-to-face meetings are invaluable, especially from an international perspective. The nuances of doing business internationally are very different than within our own countries. So the learning that I got over the years about how to communicate effectively, what was important for other markets, what was valuable to other partnerships from a different perspective, has really helped contribute to our business. So existing vendors, and then things like international distributors. This year, for the first time, this past year, I might say, our company had a booth at ISM. So we began as attending it. We then participated in sourcing and in importing. About 3 years ago, we started having a room at ISM so that we could present our product line because we had so many customers internationally. That room became more and more valuable. And then, as I said, this past year, we exhibited. It was our first time exhibiting, and it was a tremendous success for us. Our goal was to find distributors internationally in different countries. We were very successful in doing that. Unfortunately, things were a little bit derailed because of COVID. So, our hope is that the relationships that we began as a result of ISM last year will continue. And so far, they seem to be on the right track. One of the things I'll talk about is, the relationship building internationally. It's hard to put a price on the relationships that we have, but it comes up over and over again when we're looking for a particular product to satisfy a domestic customer in the US market. We have a database of contacts that we've made over the years, so we can sort of choose where we think that product will be best manufactured, what partner would be best for us. And this has all been enhanced significantly by our participation in the ISM show. There's also a relationship building on a personal side. Some of my best friends in the industry have been based on our ISM relationships, spending those particular week or 10 days with them. And that network of information, both professionally and personally, has allowed me to contribute to the businesses that I represent in numerous ways. Um, the other piece I think that's important to recognize for my business is we're a very, very strong licensed company. Licensing is challenging when you try and do international business. So it's been very helpful to find out who the licensing partners are internationally for the brands that I represent domestically, and to be able to communicate with them about what products they're doing, what tooling or manufacturing capabilities they have, how can we share in those investments, and then that also contributed to our ability to export our licensed goods. Exporting licensed goods is a big challenge because you have to find the right partners. Going to ISM allowed us to see and experience all of the partners, or a good portion of those partners, that had the licensing rights and distribution rights for their territories. So now, we then experience international licensing in a much broader way, which has allowed us to actually invest in that and get international licenses for ourselves as we find the right distributors. One of the things that Colmese has done so well, and the organization there has done so well, is to support us in the growth in our experience, whether that was initially with just attending, the VIP capabilities, so that we could have places to meet with our distributors and our partners and our vendors, the rooms that we were able to set up in order to show customers, and then now recently our first foray into our booth. I will say that if it wasn't for ISM, the international business and the importing business that we have would not have survived the way that it has. This is why I have attended every year, even through several years when certain individuals or certain financial restrictions were placed in the companies that I work with. We valued this show as the #1 show for our international and our growth. Of course, we have the NCA show, which is an incredibly important show, being a United States company. But this show broadens our capability and our reach to so many marketplaces, gives us a touch point to understand globally what we can derive from the global market, but also what we can provide for the global market. It's also been, you mentioned briefly about private label. Our private label business has grown astronomically based on the context that we've gotten from the international business and understanding where people are coming from and where they're going. Another point which is interesting would be trends. It's hard to put your finger on trends. People try and do it all the time. But I always walk the ISM show at least 2 or 3 times when I attend. The first time is usually to hit the important partnerships that I have, make sure that I touch base with the important clients and or customers that I have. The second time is usually to find new suppliers, interesting partnerships that are able to service the very specific goals that I have for that show. If I'm looking for a particular type of product, a particular format, or a particular region. And then the third time I try and walk that show with a very open mind, sort of looking for various trends, less specific. What types of packaging are people doing? The trends of healthy foods, the trends of snacks, and how can I open my mind to what's happening in a much broader way? And I find that that's always one of the most interesting ways to walk the show, because that's where I find new thought processes that come up for me in reference to things that I see. I'm far less specific at that time. So at first we used to come for 2 days, and then we started coming for 3 days, and then we started coming for the full length of the show. Now I set up meetings before the show in nearby countries. I visit the show, and then I set up meetings for countries nearby or partners after the show. So it has grown from a 2-day trip to literally a 10-day trip for me. And it is my hope that the upcoming ISM we can figure out, and that the global crisis right now will calm down, and that we can maintain this touch point and we can maintain the benefit of the ISM show. I am excited about Yumex. I guess the timing is challenging, but one of the marketplaces that opened up for us at our recent showing and our booth there was the UAE and some of the Middle Eastern areas. And so the Yumex opportunity and the combination with Gulf Foods, I think, would be very beneficial. So, I'll keep an eye on that, a very specific eye on that. Our plan is to show again this year and to expand our footprint and our presence there. And of course, the wonderful town of Cologne has always been great hosts to this, which makes it all the more interesting and fun to go back and revisit the same areas. It feels like a home after so many years. So my general take on the ISM show is it is an invaluable asset to my business and to the businesses that I represent in areas of new products, in customers, in sourcing, partnership with existing vendors, international distribution, relationship building, private label, and of course, trends in licensing. And I will say that if there is one show that I think it's very important in the international confectionery and snacks business to maintain, it would be the ISM show. It's invaluable because that's my business. So, it saves a lot of time and energy when I know that I'm going to a show that really caters to the needs that I have. Now, there is some level of interest with snacks and healthier products that we constantly dabble in and look at. So I would say that for me, the best opportunity is something that encompasses all of the confection needs that I have, which are fairly broad, from private label to novelty to toy type candies, but also has some presence with snacks and healthy foods, because it does give me some exposure to that. So I like the combination of those things, although it makes it harder to walk and to attend, and it takes more time, which is fine because that's why I'm there. So, but the focus of confection for me is really, really important for the myriad aspects of my business. I will comment while I'm speaking on the COVID situation. We have a fairly unique perspective because of our international business. We're in over 40 countries, which for us is a lot, and that is in a relatively short period of time. But it's a very interesting thing to be able to look at the wave, if you will, of where this pandemic is happening. Certain countries that we deal with are opening back up, and I'm starting to see orders being placed. I'm starting to see development happen, and certain countries are starting in the process of shutting down. Whether that's the Russia market, the South American market, whereas the UK and some of those markets and Europe are beginning to open up. It gives us an opportunity to be able to not have too much anxiety, because we're starting to see that there is an ebb and a flow to the way that this is affecting marketplaces. So as we're starting to generate new orders and new business in places that have been shut down, we see other places that are really starting that process, but it gives us great hope that on the back end of that, they too will open up. So we're definitely seeing the wave from various perspectives in the world. Again, you're seeing the progressive nature of this. For several months, production was halted in many areas, no more than 6 to 8 weeks, because companies are responding to this relatively quickly. The factories that we use are very substantial and very committed factories, very health conscious factories. So they're capable of adding the appropriate requirements to handle the COVID situation. So we've seen slowdown and in some cases disruption, but the speed at which the factories have been able to respond to the particular requirements that COVID has put on them, for me, has been nothing short of miraculous. As well as, I rely very much on our quality control teams and myself to be involved directly on site with the factories. I am so grateful for the benefits of the internet and for Zoom and for various things like this, because it would have been devastating 10 years ago to the nature of our business. But we're able to monitor the way things are changing in our manufacturing partnerships, almost being on site to a certain degree. So we have found some disruption, but we have been able to modify our shipping schedules, Our partners have been very understanding. This is also something that unfortunately, it is a global pandemic. So this is not a situation where we've had to explain to other marketplaces why this is happening. Everybody knows why it's happening. So the partnership that we've had from both our manufacturers internationally and our customers internationally has been nothing short of fantastic in the support. So I do have great hope. We're starting to see a lot of those orders come back. We're starting to see a lot more product ship. And there's a general global understanding of the pandemic, which allows us to not lose a tremendous amount of business. And most importantly, it's a shared anxiety. So we don't feel alone in this process, which I think is really valuable. Certain businesses are doing fairly robust business in the grocery stores, some of the mass marketers, Walmart, some of the value channel chains, because they are considered vital and they are open and they were picking up that. I think it's going to be a staggered resurgence. We're supposed to go in certain areas to what we call a yellow, where certain stores are supposed to be able to reopen. I think it's going to be a slow process in the US based on the size of the country, in that certain markets will begin to reopen. And my guess is we'll start to see a more robust business in the next 4 to 6 weeks in some key marketplaces. But it's hard to predict because, we also have other issues here right now in the US. There are a lot of protests going on. There's a lot of civil unrest right now. And, I would have told you a few weeks ago that within about 2 months to 2.5 months, I think business would have been much more robust and the retailers opening. Due to our civil unrest here, I think that's going to be a setback to how this happens in two fronts. One, in retail reopening. There is a lot, the civil unrest is having a lot of impact on retail. And two, in a possible COVID resurgence. Based on a lot of what's happening. Our government and our local governments are predicting that we will have a resurgence of COVID based on the civil unrest because of the gatherings. So I would say, unfortunately, Ivan, the situation here has made the prognosis of when we will open slower and less certain. Thank you very much for having me, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to support this very, very important trade show.